All right. Welcome to CS456, the third video, probably. It's the video that comes after face-to-face conversations. And today we're going to talk about telephone-based conversations, where we'll see a different set of contexts and different ways of dealing with the different parts of elements of a conversation. So let's switch over to my screen and there we go. All right, so social conversations on the telephone. Beginning with the context. So obviously the context on a phone call is different than a face-to-face conversation. On a phone call, the only context I have is that I can hear your voice. And so I have a much weaker sense of where you are physically. I have a much weaker sense of how you're doing emotionally. I don't really know your mental state. And so these are things we just have to work through when we have a conversation on the telephone. So, for example, I've done phone calls from foreign countries in which the person I was talking to thought I was just down the street. You've probably done similar things as well. Um, However, on a phone conversation, background noise can inadvertently bring some of the context into the conversation. I was talking with a church leader once about an issue that a member of our unit was facing, and I heard some background noise that sounded like traffic. Turns out that he was in a taxi in Thailand somewhere, and I was in Utah, and I didn't know that until I heard the traffic in the background. You've probably had similar experiences as well. The other risky thing in a phone conversation is that I don't have a good sense of your emotional state, and you don't have a good sense of mine. So I may call somebody to talk about something, and it turns out they're having a really bad day, and I just don't know because I can't see them. And so that might play into the context of the conversation. So with a phone conversation, I can hear your voice only. So those are the elements of context in a phone-based conversation. Phone conversations have initiation rituals as well. As you might guess, these are only verbal, but not all of the verbal parts of an initiation are not all of the verbal parts of an initiation ritual are words. Some of them are just like utterances. We do turn taking on a phone-based conversation. Also only verbal, also might be utterances, and I'm just going to go ahead and copy these now because we're going to put these pretty much everywhere. So only verbal, could be utterances. Some of the breakdowns that happen in a phone-based conversation happen because it's hard to know whose turn it is, because I can't see you to pick up on nonverbal cues that you want to say something, so we end up talking over each other quite often. Similarly, farewell rituals involve only verbal cues, and they can be utterances as well. And just to be complete, and the breakdowns that happen in phone conversations are often related to the fact that we can't see each other, and how we deal with those breakdowns only depends on verbal things that are also utterances. As before, the best way to see this is with some examples, and comedy is a good place to start because some of these breakdowns and initiation routines are exaggerated for comedic effect, as they say. So let's watch the beginning of a conversation, and then we'll break down the initiation. We'll look at a time when the conversation broke down. We won't go all the way through the conclusion, but I'll show you a second example in a minute where we go all the way through the conclusion.
Why is that?
Hi, how can I help you?
Yeah, hi. My refrigerator's broken.
Okay, how old is the refrigerator?
Just bought it yesterday.
What brand?
Hoshizaki.
Okay, and how did you pay for it?
In cash.
And what seems to be the problem?
It just keeps spilling ice all over my floor.
Okay, what material is the floor made of?
Wood.
Great. And on a scale of 1 to...
Okay, so by the way, one of the things Studio C is really good at, and other sketch-based comedy productions, is setting the context early. So you can see the opening shot sets the context. It's a guy in his kitchen fiddling around with his refrigerator. And then for the woman talking to him, The context is set very early as well there. It's a woman in a call center with a headset on. So anyway, they do really good at setting the context. Keep in mind though, when you have an actual phone conversation, you don't know the context. So in a minute, we're going to watch this again, except we're not going to watch it. We're just going to listen to it and pay attention to just the verbal cues. So let's back up for a second and look at the initiation ritual. And you'll see some phrases and utterances there, and then a transition from the initiation ritual into the turn-taking phase of the conversation.
Hi, how can I help you?
Yeah, hi.
So she starts off with, "Hi, how can I help you?" It's a bit scripted, and you expect that for a call center phone call anyway, but it's part of this particular initiation ritual, and initiation rituals can vary quite a bit. And then he starts with an which is a way to create some space for him to think. I say a lot too, my bad. So you're used to that as you watch these videos.
My refrigerator's broken.
Okay, how?
She then says, okay, and then starts asking questions. So as you listen to it, you can hear how they're using tone and kind of tone or intonations, either sliding up or sliding down to emphasize things as their conversations go on. And again, because this was filmed, you see a lot of things that we won't see when we watch it without film. All right, so watch for what happens when there's a breakdown in the conversation.
How old is the refrigerator?
Just bought it yesterday.
What brand?
Hoshi's.
So you can see that for the turn-taking parts of the conversation, her tone is going up to indicate that that's the end of a question. His tone is going down to indicate that that's the end of a response. So let's just listen to one of those again.
What brand?
Hoshizaki.
Okay, and how did you pay for it?
In cash.
And what seems to be the problem?
It just keeps.
All right, we're gonna watch that without video anyway, it turns out. Okay, so watch for when the conversation breaks down and listen to what is said.
And what seems to be the problem?
It just keeps spilling ice all over my floor.
Okay, what material is the floor made of?
Wood.
Okay, so she says, what material is the floor made of? He was not expecting that question. So in his response, he uses some verbal cues that was a bit of a surprise. So he says wood instead of just wood. All right, so it's a breakdown in a conversation, and that's the verbal. And you could see when he said would, he kind of did his hand and leaned into it. That's a nonverbal cue that the conversation is breaking down. So let's listen to that again, but this time we'll have you not watch it, and you can see how it plays out just using verbal cues. We're not going to necessarily catch the whole thing, but we'll catch a lot of it.
Help you?
Yeah, hi. My refrigerator's broken.
Okay, how old is the refrigerator?
Just bought it yesterday.
What brand?
Hoshizaki.
Okay, and how did you pay for it?
In cash.
And what seems to be the problem?
It just keeps spilling ice all over my floor.
Okay, what material is the floor made of?
Wood.
Great.
All right,
and
so
on a scale of 1 to 10,
even if you're only catching the verbal parts and the nonverbal parts, you can still see where the conversation is breaking down. Okay, so let's look at one more example. This is a woman named Rachel who apparently teaches a class about how to speak American English. She's going to spend 13 minutes breaking down a roughly minute-and-a-half phone call. So I'll let you listen to the phone call, and then we'll briefly break down the parts. If you're interested, you can watch the entire video and see how she breaks down the phases of a conversation on the phone. She ends up with roughly the same structure, but calls it different things and goes a lot more deeply into tone and inflection and intent for non-native English speakers to learn how to speak American English like a native, I guess. All right, so here's her making a phone call, and this will set up the context and let you hear the conversation.
I'm going to call my mom. No idea if she's home. Let's see, it's 2:30 her time. We'll see if she picks up. She's not answering. Hey, Mom.
What's up?
Not much. How are you?
Pretty good.
What are you doing?
Roberta and Ernie are here.
Oh, that's right. Now for the analysis.
Okay, so that's the beginning of the conversation. Let me flip to the end, and she'll play the whole thing through to the farewell ritual. All right, so here it goes again.
What's up?
Not much. How are you?
Pretty good.
What are you doing?
Roberta and Ernie are here.
Oh, that's right. All right, we'll have a good dinner tonight.
Okay, well, have fun.
All right, we'll talk to you guys soon.
Enjoy New York.
I will. Thank you. All right, bye.
Okay, so as you listen to that conversation, you can hear the initiation ritual, and then she cut out the turn-taking phase in the middle, so that's not in there. And then you could hear the farewell ritual. And farewell rituals on the phone often go like that. Okay, bye. Okay, bye. Talk to you later. Okay. And so there's this sort of really quick interchange as the conversation kind of wraps up. The other thing that this conversation shows really well is the lack of context. So when Rachel calls her mother, the first thing her mother says is, Steve and Richie, or anyway, whoever those two people were, are here. Because Rachel has no idea who's in the room with her mother when she starts to talk to her mother. So her mother says that to very quickly establish the physical context. Okay, so I'll post links to both of those videos on Slack. You can also Google them. It's not hard to find them. All right, so the point of this was to review how the lack of context impacts social interaction on the telephone. That contrasts with how the complete shared context impacts interaction in face-to-face conversations. And the whole point of looking at both of these is to contrast both face-to-face conversations and telephone conversations with computer-mediated conversations. And we'll start that in the next lectures.